Hello. So good morning all. I am Charuan Misit from University of Luxembourg Competence Center. It is my pleasure to welcome you all today to the webinar on the title of a self-defending operational technology, or the OT, in manufacturing and industry. So this webinar is part of a skill and training on the LDH project that aims to leverage digital skills in manufacturing and industry sector that are available in our region in Luxembourg. So today we have two speakers with us. They will be giving us the talks into different topics related to the security domain. So so now we can move to our agenda. So here is our agenda that we're gonna have today. So we already start with the introduction, of the purpose of this webinar, and then we're gonna start with the first talk in cybersecurity law standards and regulations, and then we have the OT for the industries and the pragmatic approach, for the OT security, and then we're gonna have the questions and a summary for the talk. And then we're gonna announce some of the LDH services that are available, for this project. So we have the two speakers here. We have the Marco Rocchetto and Jean-François Decour. So you want to say hello?
Hello everyone.
Okay. So so now let's meet with our first speaker, Marco Rocchetto. So Marco received his PhD in computer science at the University of Livorno, Italy. So he has been working on the research from 2010 until 2017 at the SUTD, the University in Singapore, and University of Luxembourg here. So in 2017, he joined at the United Technologies Group as the senior engineer. So then in 2020, he is a co-founder of V Research and a private R&D center on the cybersecurity. So just to make sure that when you have right now we will collect all the questions, and then the questions will be published at the end of these two talks. So if you have any questions right now, you can put in a chat, and then we will collect them, and then at the end of their presentations, like both presentations, we will publish the questions. Okay, so now Marco, the floor is yours, and please, here,
Thank
you
you
can
very
start your
much.
talk.
Thanks for inviting me, and thanks everyone for attending this talk. Let me see if I can. Yes, I can move the slides. So I have about 20 slides, so I will try to reduce to the minimum the time that I spend on these kind of slides where I present myself and I show you what I've done during the last period. And I will try to focus more on, as Jarwan introduced, on laws and regulations, and how those laws and regulation can be addressed by standards and what does it mean. So at the end of the talk, I will show you some concrete examples of how I work for the compliance of business processes of different type of companies for a couple of different standards. So, but before digging into these details, as Jad once said, I'm one of the co-founder of this V-Research startup, and we started it just the two of us, Francesco and I, with these two different backgrounds. I'm more on the research side of the cybersecurity, while Francesco more on the business side, as you can see. And our idea was to create a startup focusing on governance, risk, and compliance (GRC), where we could actually use my background to propose a more formal approach, and that was related to our experiences in which risk assessment, which is a central part of any compliance process, and it's central to any of the major standards. Currently, risk assessment is mostly based on experience, is done not in a formal way. So the results of the risk assessments that are the core part for the compliance process for example, ISO 27001 or other similar standards, is currently really not giving an overview, like an intuition of the posture, of the cybersecurity posture of a company. So that was our basic idea in 2020. We received some funding from Europe. It's a 4 million research project that we are using to create a product that can actually automate and give a more precise approach, let's say, to GRC, and in particular to threat assessment. We are working with several customers, and the only thing that I want to show you here is that there are some censored customers, and this is something that I wanted to highlight, not because they do not want to share that they're working with us, but because cybersecurity is currently something perceived as a business enabler for most of our customers. So they are waiting to show that they have invested in cybersecurity, and they don't want to show this approach to the competitors. So currently cybersecurity is actually perceived as one of the important assets that all these companies related to all the OT industries have. So laws, and the first thing is why cybersecurity? Why all these companies, mostly related to the OT to the OT field, are requesting more and more cybersecurity? Well, one of the answer is because there are some laws and regulation, mostly in Europe, so in all of the European countries. Um, on the cybersecurity of the OT components. One of the main one is the machinery regulation. You see, it's pretty new. It's 14 June this year, and in this machinery regulation, the EU Parliament and the Council they introduced some specific cybersecurity requirements that are needed both to use OT components for the manufacturing in the whole Europe, but also to sell those OT components for the manufacturing domain. And what this regulation points at is the second point that you have here in the slide, which is the EU regulation on ENISA, the European Union Agency on Cybersecurity. So what the European Parliament says is, if you want to sell or produce an OT component in Europe, then you have to have some security in place. And this security is regulated by what ENISA says. And ENISA is currently working on several different certifications on cybersecurity. Some of them are going to be released this year, some other next years. There's a plan to have cybersecurity certification programs expanding from IT to the OT domains. Then, of course, there are regulations such as GDPR, more focused on privacy aspects, but nonetheless, they actually require the companies to have some cybersecurity policy at least in place. There is the usual export control if you want to export something that is related, for example, to, well, usually the export control was related to things like weapons, like if you have a new weapon that you develop in your own country, you cannot actually export it to a different one. Well, cybersecurity is also considered here. If you look at the text, you're going to see that if you develop a new, for example, offensive technique or prevention technique, you cannot export it as it is. You have to, you have to look at the regulations, and then you may be able to export to some of the European countries. And then the last one that I want to mention is a directive, still a EU directive on the radio equipment directive. It's the directive that you have to comply with if you want to sell like IoT or OT components that deals with Wi-Fi. And in this year, they introduced some cybersecurity requirements too. So it's a pressing it's a pressing problem for Europe, and all these OT manufacturers, they need to align to these requests. They need to comply, with this request from Europe. Now, there are different standards and framework that a company can use in order to comply with these regulations, with these requests. And now I have here, like I have categorized them based on organization-wide or specific. Specific meaning specific to a technology, to a specific business type. So organization-wide, I think the most widely known is the ISO 27001, but also the NIST cybersecurity framework in the US and the cheese control, which are, let's say, less complicated than ISO 27001 and are more suited for like small and medium businesses. While specific, you may have heard about the PCI DSS for the payment card industry, or the GDPR, but also the IEC, sorry, 62443 for the industrial automation control system. I'm sorry here, the style is a bit messy. It's probably, due to the conversion from Google to PPTX. So standards and framework, as I wrote here, are necessary. I then use necessary because I want to emphasize that if a business wants actually to run its business in Europe related to the OT domain, is going to be necessary. The regulations have been released recently, but in the next years is going to be a business enabler to be compliant with some of these standards and framework. Otherwise, the whole supply chain won't be able to actually use the OT components that you propose. So these frameworks are necessary for managing and safeguarding the information technology, the IT part, of course, and but not just the IT part, also the resource, the OT components, the product that you produce, and the whole systems that you use in order to produce these OT components from cybersecurity threats and risks, of course. And one of the highlights, let's say, of the ISO 27001, but also of the 62443, is that they do not only focus on technicalities. They do not believe, they do not share that the cybersecurity of a component is just a matter of a cybersecurity architecture. They predicate over the whole company and the whole process that is used in order to produce some product, some OT product. So the business processes are the focus for the cybersecurity of a company. So I'm sorry here, the two lines, of course, one of the two lines should be slightly up. So I wanted to show a company that is sort of divided into two parts: business processes, HR, finance, legal, the whole IT department. And those are all covered by, addressed by the ISO 27001. So a company-wide cybersecurity standards that predicate how HR, for example, should do their work, and they predicate over their business processes. Things such as introducing into the contract some requirements about how the new employee is going to deal with passwords, for example, or authorizations. And then you have 62443 for industrial automation and control system that mostly predicates over the production of the OT components. That means over the development from the very early stages, the design requirements, up to the implementation, and even to the maintenance part and the installation of these OT components in the sites of one of the customers, for example. So the usage. Um, Now, if a company that produces OT components wants to start and this process of compliance and then become compliant with one of these standards that I mentioned, what is the process? Well, the first thing is you need to choose the right standard. Here in this talk, I will mostly focus on 27001 and 62443. These are two standards. By the way, I don't get money if you buy those standards, right? So I'm completely independent from ISA and ISO, the two that are selling those standards. But there are a lot of standards that may suit your business need. So if your company is, for example, focusing on on cloud-based technology, either because they sell cloud-based technology or because they mostly use cloud-based technology, there are many standards. One of the current leading standards in Europe that I've at least received many requests from our customers is the ISO 27017. That it's a sort of extension of the 27001 and deals with the specific cloud base. But there is the CSR star. There are many standards. So the first step is to stop and understand what is the business need. Do they need to protect their business processes? And if so, what are those business processes? Are based on cloud-based, on on-prem tech, etc. Or it's an OT component, it's an OT company, then we may want to move to 62443. Then the second step is to perform a gap assessment. So you want to have an understanding, like, the company currently is operating in this way. These are the business processes. This is the business processes are informal, or maybe there are some documents that describe those business processes, which type of components they produce, how many versions, how long they have been producing these components, how many premises they have. So there are a lot of questions that are required to be answered in order to understand the gap between the current situation of the company and what is needed to be compliant with all the requests of the standard. Then starts a quite long process, usually, of writing policies, all the requirements in order to meet what the standards asks. And then the procedure. So you have to go through the different processes of a company and change them, or yeah, tune them so that they are compliant with the policy you wrote, and then you implement them. So policies and procedure are basically the design of a secure business processes, of securing business processes of a company. The implementation means to use the correct technology to configure the IT system so that they are compliant with the procedure you wrote, which themselves are in turn compliant with the policies. And everything is based, all these choices are based on the risk assessment. So once you have a sort of clear understanding of what you want, what is the current situation, what is the desiderata, then you perform a risk assessment so that you prioritize the implementation of those business processes. And all the standards, so for example, the ISO 27001, they are based on a continuous improvement. So the process needs to be reiterated every year, and you review all your processes, etc., so that you can improve the security posture. Now, here is sorry again for the style. Here is a sort of summary of the 27001. So once you are compliant with the 27001, what you have is a information security management system, which is a set of policies and procedure. Here you have the different types of policies and procedure. Um, then divided into the different sections of the company, of the standard. So as you can see, section 4 is basically focusing on the context of the organization, what I said before, to understand how the company operates, basically, what are the roles and the responsibilities, the hierarchical structure of the company, and the scope of the ISMS, of the information security management system. Leadership, okay, I already said that. There's a part of planning related to the risk assessment, as already mentioned, and then there is the operation and support in which you actually perform the operation. You implement what you implement what you have designed. So up to that point, and then the final one is the improvement. So the continuous review of the processes of the procedure every year that are going to be actually performed with the certification body. But so this is enough, I'd say, for the usual IT stuff. What does it change when you want to actually have this compliance, but for the OT systems and the production of the system in your company? Well, there's the 62443, I think, is one of the quite precise, I'd say, and then complete standards that we have out there. You see, there's a generic section with the usual, like, concepts and models and glossary, etc. And then it's divided into policies and procedure. So there are 4 different subparts of the standards that predicate over policies and procedures. And I here have selected the 6244321, which is the one that defines the requirements for the all management system. So it's, as we saw before, the ISO 27001 asks you to have an information security management system. Here we have an IACS, so Industrial Automation and Control System Security Management System. And then the last, and then we have below it, we have the system part, where you have like security technologies for industrial automation and control system, the risk assessment and design of the system, etc. And then at the end, you have a specific two specific sub part of the standards, one dealing with the production of OT components and the other one with their security architecture. So the three substandards in the red squares are those that I will focus on in the next slides. The first one is these 2.1 that define with this, let's say, overall picture, what is going to happen to the company. Like, what is your cybersecurity framework going to predicate over? So the first one is the scope. So very similar to 27001, you have to define which business operations you have, which are the assets, which are the physical premises of your company, the organization, like roles and responsibilities, which type of roles you have, which managers, etc. And then you have to provide the training, and then to both, to improve their skills in terms of cybersecurity, but also their awareness on the risks that that the company itself may be facing if they do not comply with some policies or even guidelines. And then you have these for 1 and for 2 for the policies. And so I'm now, sorry, let me jump back. So you have to define all this stuff in order to, properly provide a sort of vision on how the company is going to transform their processes and their responsibilities once a company actually wants to be compliant with this type of standards. So they need to know that that there is going to be a risk assessment methodology, that there is going to be a sort of review of all the roles, and maybe the introduction of some new roles related to cybersecurity, or the new cybersecurity operation that we're going to implement, that we're going to create, let's say, for the company. So once you have this overall umbrella, and you have a clear understanding on how the company works, and on the other side, for example, the C level have an understanding of what it means to move to this compliance process for their business processes. Then you have to, then you what you can do is you can start reviewing how the production of the OT components is done within this company. And the 6244341 is the subpart of the standard that predicates over the production of the development of the OT components. It is divided into different practices. I think it's 8 or 9 practices. So I have here a list. I will go through it rather quickly, but any question is much welcome, and I can deep dive on any of these practice here. So the first one is security management, which is actually linked to what we just saw. So they just want to be sure that you have everything planned and documented and executed, right? So they want to be sure that all the roles that you defined, etc., also consider this production of the OT system. Then the practice 2 is mostly related to the specification of security requirements for the different products. Then they predicate over the design. So once you have the requirement, you move to design, and the practice 3 is the one that defines the secure by design approach that the 62443 wants you to have. And then practice 4 is the implementation, the secure implementation with all the testing that you see afterwards, with the secure implementation of the OT systems. Practice 5, the verification of the requirements, for example, with respect to the design, and the validation with some testing at the end when you have implemented your system. And then you have practice 6, in which the standard predicates over the management of security related issues. So what happens if somebody like in the outside of the company identifies a vulnerability, how you deal with that. And the security update. So once you have for example, a vulnerability that has been shared with the company or that the company itself identified, how do you deal with the update, the security update in the field? Because OT components are sometimes disconnected. So when you have a manufacturing company using one of your OT components, it may not be connected to the internet. So there are a few complications, let's say, with respect to the usual IT or cloud-based touch in the OT domain, especially for the edge computing. And then you have security guidelines, what you need to provide to your customers so that they can actually install and manage the OT system in the field securely. So a deep dive on practice one. So the SM1 asks you to have an understanding of the general understanding of the development process that you have in place, then to identify SM2 to identify the responsibilities. So throughout the development process, most often than not, you have a process that is somehow informal, and there are groups of people who are actually working as one of these roles. Well, here you have to assign one specific role to each part or to each yes, to manage each of the steps of the development process. Then you have the identification of applicability. Once you run your development process, you need to have a sort of list, and you go through it to understand if this new product needs to go through the secure development lifecycle, or if you can somehow relax it or even skip it. So if you have a company that produces OT components for different customers in the manufacturing domain, of course, those need to go through the secure development lifecycle. But maybe a company also wants to implement something that is internal, that it's not safety critical, that has no real, potential impact. It's a small application. You don't go through the complex secure development lifecycle. So this identification of applicability is a sort of gate to understand if you have to go through the process itself in a secure or not, in a secure way or not. Security expertise, so that the HR, for example, when they hire somebody or when the CTO assigns or whoever is in charge assigns a specific role to a specific responsibility, they need to have the security expertise that it's required by the standard and the role and the step in which they predicate within the process, in the development process. And process scoping, of course, because cybersecurity is it is complex to be implemented, requires an investment. So you want to have a clear understanding of what is inside the scope of these security implementation and what is outside. There may be some product or some part of the company that you want to exclude so that you can better focus, or because you have some budget that do not cover the whole operation. So any premise, for example, of the company, any of the premises of the company. So you start from one of the premises, one of the let's say subsidiary, for example, of a holding, and then you expand. So up to now, I have quickly showed you sort of an overview of what those standards asks and required, but everything is more or less theoretical. It's very abstract. So I should have still 10 more minutes that I can use to go through sort of example. It's a very easy example. Of course, it's a minor part of a 6244341 compliance process, but I think I think it would benefit all of those people who would never actually perform such a compliance process. So here you have the practice one. So this is sorry, you have a design of a process which is compliant to some of the requirements of the 6244341, and especially with and particularly, sorry, with the practice one. So these notation here, this language here, this graphical language is called BPMN. It's business process model and notation. It's a sort of convenient way to design a new process for a company. Instead of writing it, that becomes a very complex and large text file, which usually people don't like to read. Well, this you can show it in a slide as I'm doing with you. So you have the different lanes. So the one up, it's what the product manager does when it starts the development of a new product. So you have this circle, which says new product or feature identified and approved by the board of director. That means that the board of director has given the indication that a new product can be produced, so that the production line may start, the production process may start, and the product manager gets the notification and starts the process. First thing is to identify a product owner, somebody who has the responsibility for the product itself, so of technical responsibilities, technical responsibility for the product. So the product manager may be somebody who actually deals with all the financing and then the sales, etc., the marketing. What the product owner in this case is a technical person. So even here, you may see that it's not that easy to actually have a clear understanding of which are all the roles and responsibility that you may have in a company. Different companies have different roles and different expectation, different terminology. So this part is usually something that requires quite a bit of time so that you can list the responsibility and what they actually do. And so this, once the product manager identifies the product owner, then with an email starts the process with the product owner. And the product owner performs the identification of applicability, something that I just mentioned last slide. So the identification of applicability is a request by 62443, so that the company has a way to identify if this new product needs to go through the secure development lifecycle. And connected to the identification of applicability on its left-hand side, you see there's a policy here. It's a policy or procedure. So you have a policy with a link to the document that describes what describes the requirement for this identification of applicability. So it's a policy and gives you a sort of understanding of what the company expects from the product owner when he has to perform these analysis. So then you have these X, the black X, that is a sort of a split. So if the product or the new feature needs to be compliant with this 62443, then you move to the process scoping. Otherwise, you skip it. Then the process scoping itself has a link to a document that describes the policy itself. Now, if you you may have noticed that there are some so in the identification of applicability and process scoping within the square, you have some plus. This is because they are structured process. So the good thing about using BPMN is that I can show to the customer a sort of high level overview, and then we can dig deeper into the different sub processes and with maybe some other technical peers, while the more abstract overview, then you can share it with the C-suite, for example, to show how their company processes are going to be transformed. Now I will focus on this process on the left hand side, the one in the red square. So we get into this sub process, and you have the product manager that starts with provides a description of this new product and feature to the product owner, and the product owner has the responsibility to fill in the identification of applicability checklist. And here you can link the spreadsheet with the checklist. And finally, it's as I said, it's a very easy example, but here you have a checklist that we prepared where there are different criteria that may identify a product as sensitive. So you have to go through the secure development process or not. And these criteria are, for example, well, if the product is intended for a market or a customer that requires this. So the customer, the supply chain of the customer needs to be compliant with 62443, then of course you have to go through it. Or if the information and the data are sensitive, if the could be an impact on IP or company reputation, or the row number 5, if there is any specific laws or regulation directive that you have to comply with, or if the impact on the customer may be too serious, so we want to go through the secure development lifecycle. Now, I think I have spent exactly 30 minutes, and so I thank you all. I know it's a lot to process, but I wanted to give you a sort of complete overview from what the standards require up to their implementation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Marco. So now we're gonna move to our second speaker. So we have the Jean-François Decour with us, and he is a mechanical engineer who has been working in computerized industrial systems for more than 25 years. So his specialization lies in the life science industry, so with a strong focus on the pharma industry. So he is one of the founding partners of the ADX. So now the floor is yours, Jean-François. So please.
Thank you. Just for the time, you prefer to have some kind of 10 minutes at the before noon to be sure to have some question, or
yes, we have some questions, from the previous talk, and also I'm pretty sure we're going to have some questions from your talk also.
So I will try to do
yes,
that in 50 minutes so that we keep 10 minutes for the end. Okay for you?
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you.
I will share my screen. Just tell me if you see correctly the screen. Is that correct? You see the screen?
I see your screen, yes.
Perfect.
Perfect.
So, so I will not go through the details as explained by Marco regarding all the regulation you have in Europe and how the way you can implement them. I will do today a short presentation about a pragmatic approach about OT in industries. Just a presentation of ASDEX, the OT framework that we use every day in my job, and also try to go through this pragmatic approach. Who we are? We are a company created 6 years ago, about something about 70 engineers today, serving mostly manufacturing industry across Europe, especially pharma industry, energy, equipment manufacturing, and aerospace. We have 3 main business units covering all real-time data flow in manufacturing, the automation to automate all processes for the industry, the computerized information system to use the data, collect the data, and use them to provide data to the last business unit, which is the business intelligence that can use those data to enhance the production and so on. We create everything at ASDEX through the trust with all people, the clients, the partner. And also we define a lot of partners around us, and with Bob Molumba, today we define some topics about the OT implementation in the industry, and Bob is part of the people around the table today. Okay, I will go today in something that will be for some of you very easy to understand, because that's the basic about what we have in a production industry. In the beginning, you have just a network called IT network. On this network, you have a lot of things. You have office application, you could have equipment, you have the acquisition system for the equipment, you have the PLC, which is the programmatic logic controller, that is part of the automation of the equipment. You have the process control, so you are able through software and to application to process the equipment and to automate everything. You could have some BMS system, like the building management system, to manage all the HVAC and stuff like that in your company. You have, of course, also all the IT services. We can speak about printing, file sharing, user access. It's all related to IT services. And you have also some supervision system that allow you to supervise everything related to your BMS, your equipment, your process control, that allow you to supervise everything at once. And of course, today, you cannot do anything without being connected to the web. We are not expert in OT in ASDEX, but we use very often network and OT infrastructure when we do implementation in the pharma industry, for the automation part. And what we hear very often, not broken, don't fix it, meaning it works. So what I need to care about security, because today everything is okay. And so when you have this kind of client in front of you that say that, oh, it's okay, it seems to be okay, my IT guys say everything is okay. For the cyber security, you have no real security in place. You have no security process. Marco insists on that regarding to have process in place, not only hardware or application that do the security, but also the process itself that is very important to have in place. Process when a new user is engaged in the company, what is the process to have the right rights in the access for the files and stuff like that. You don't have any packet filtering, firewall technology in place because you say, okay, everything is communicates on the network, it works, so no specific requirements. You have no intrusion prevention system. Some systems on the market today are able to say, oh, there is some signature about the traffic on Ethernet that say that there is some attempt to attack you. There is something on place, so there is nothing like this. And also very important when you are attacked, many customers say, I was attacked, but I don't know how they introduce. Is it a user internally that click on an email? Is it an external attack? You don't have anything to say, okay, I will try to restart my company, but I don't know how they did it. So if you don't know how they did it, you're not able to protect you correctly. So when you speak about the Grail in industrial OT, you speak about a lot of things to put in place. You need to segregate the network completely between the IT network and the OT network. Office applications stay on the IT part. You have a web with a lot of security, with application provided on the web on the DMZs. You need to split all the services, all the application between the layer 3.5, 3.2.1. And the main objective of this is to say that if you are attacked mainly by the web, but also internally, the point is that for any link between the layer 3 and 3.5 and 3 and 2, 2 and 1, there is very strict rules in between. So if you have any concern here, or at this level, or at this level, you are very well protected because for any communication between layers, you are able to say, I allow this one and I decline this one. And so put that in place, very complicated, very costly, and it takes much time for the company. So we start from a simple IT one, IT which is no security. And if you go to the Grail, then you need to put in place a lot of things in between. That's why we say today, from my point of view, when I go to my clients, it's to say, please have a pragmatic approach regarding that. If you speak about IT security, and Marco go very deeply about all the directive, about cyber security, what is mandatory by EU, and so on and so on. But I should say, first thing you have to understand when you are an end user and you are a producer, it's to say that when you speak about security, you speak about preventive action and corrective action. Mainly when I discuss about some industry, a small company, and when I say, do you have a DRP, a disaster recovery plan, they say, a what? The DRP is the main point if one day your system is completely broken. And you hear for the hospital a few weeks ago, for some very big industry previously, they were attacked, they were completely blocked regarding the production, and they were not able to reinstall everything with a point of time to say, okay, maybe I missed some data, but I'm able to restart if I have a big attack. Why? Because they didn't put in place a real disaster recovery plan. For this DRP, you have some points. I will discuss that just on the next slide. Very easy to say. You need to define your LPO, your RTO analysis, and you need to define a DRP strategy. For me, this one is in parallel, and maybe that's the first step. You will see that just after, to say that in parallel, I will go from my single IT network to a full OT network. And for this one, we speak about iterative OT implementation, meaning that you are not obliged to say, I need to put a lot of money on the table and I have 2 months to do everything. Not at all. You have to go pragmatically from an IT to a full OT network. And maybe you don't have to go to the full OT network, depending about what you define or criticity of your production and so on. So for me, the priorities when you try to implement cybersecurity, mainly, not OT, but cybersecurity, it's to be sure that in case of total failure of your computerized system, your network, and so on, you are able to restart your company in a time slot. And in parallel, and maybe priority 2, it's to be sure that slowly you go from a simple IT to a full OT network. Very important. The point when we speak about DIP, it's very simple to understand. It's to say that in a time, because it's a time here, you have an event, a disaster that arrives on your company. Then you need to define 2 different things. The first thing is to define what is your recovery point. The recovery point is to answer to the question, how much data can you afford to recreate or lose? Meaning that if you have your backup system that do a backup every 1 hour of all your production data and all your data, it means that if you have 59 minutes after a disaster because you are attacked, you will lose maximum 59 minutes. But you can say that maybe the shorter you will put in place this data loss, the more expensive it will be to put that in place. So define this, you will say, oh, I cannot lose any data. Then you will have to put many money on the table. And so this one is already a first topic to define clearly, because the shorter it is, the expensive it is also. Same things for the other one. Everything is done. How much downtime you can accept for your company before to be recover time and restart a normal operation. The other question is, how quickly must you recover? What is the cost of downtime? And once again, if you say, oh, if I have any attack, I need to restart my production in 1 minute, it will be very costly to put in place. Everything is possible in computerized system, but very costly. If you say, oh, maybe that 1 day is acceptable, of course, it's not the dream of the company to have 1 day without any production, but it's better to have 1 day that's 1 month, 1 year. So you need to define that, and you need to put in place this DIP. You could have also, for the OT part, to have a pragmatic approach. Of course, this presentation here, or this information here, it's just illustrative. So don't take that to say, I need to do this. No, it's just to say that before to go from basic security to full OT, you can go step by step, because it's a change in the way you will produce, the way you will use your computerized system, the way you will produce will be affected by that. And so you go step by step. We could here explain that, for example, the basic security, cyber security, it's to have a global Active Directory. You will say for most of your company, of course, we have that. Very good. Just an external firewall to say that from the external web, I have already a firewall. And already I have an automated backup on an external server. It's already not bad. It's already a basic cyber security. Then you start to do the segregation. Remember that we speak about full OT. It's a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 4.5 level of segregation, but you can start with the basic segregation. So you start with an IT OT with an intermediary firewall, and you start to put in place the IT processes, because it's not only technology, the cybersecurity, it's also related to the process in your company. When you want to do something, you need to follow a specific process to ensure that if you follow this process, you will have a good security in place, because you will not authorize anything from anybody. Then you can go to structured segregation. For example, backup with a dedicated server in Luxembourg, something more locally with automated restore function. So it will be faster to restore the data if you have any problem. You can say that you go to full IT security processes, meaning that you start that here, and there you have everything required to say, all my IT processes are under a specific document that say how to do that. And introduce also, because that's very important, when you go from a basic cybersecurity to a full OT, you need to dedicate a team and dedicate test procedure to be sure that this implementation, it's not a one-shot implementation. You will implement that slowly, but when it is implemented, you cannot say, oh, it's implemented, so I don't take a look at it during 1 year. Not at all. You need to have a team, some people that can take a look at this and interact, react about some attack attempt, and so on and so on. So very important that the more you go in detail, the more you need to put in place things, and the more you need people to do that. It's not automatic. Not everything is automatic. You can go to advanced segregation here, multi-layer segregation with firewalls of new generation. Very important when we speak about firewall. Most of the time when we speak about firewall, we speak about a specific port, a specific application that can access this specific machine related to IP address or whatever. The new generation is able to do BI of your data on your network, meaning that with this advanced firewall, you will be able to identify more deeply what is normal and abnormal and create alarms and stuff like that. So it's really very interesting to implement this kind of firewall. But of course, the costs continue to grow if you go to the full OT with the 5-layer segregation, with complete intelligent firewalls, continuous monitoring with analytical modules, and so on and so on. So once again, take a look about DIP first. For the OT part, it will be more step-by-step implementation. This one is just an example, very simple. And you need to define that with the company or the people that will implement that, how to go from my status today to the final full OT implementation. What is very important, and I think that Marco already explained that, you need to do an assessment. We do external, meaning just to have people that do that all the time, to do this assessment to understand what is your actual situation and what could be the next step. And the next step is represented here very easily to say, okay, the first step you will do is to define a security plan with a level you will implement. You will control this plan, meaning that when it's implemented, as I said, you need to control that everything is correctly implemented. If there is some alarm, some information, you need to analyze this. And then at the moment you say, okay, now that I have already this first step implemented, I would like to improve. This improve will say, I will modify my security plan, implement and continue. So this one will be something that you will implement regarding a first assessment, external assessment, and define finally the steps from today status to the final status you would like to reach in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. It depends once again about how much money you can put on the table because it's costly, and what is your final target to say with this target, I estimate that it's okay for my company. Something very important is that it's very costly, you know that. And the external assessment will cost very few days of work with you to say, I propose you this. Your DIP, it's a little bit more costly, but once again, it's not a huge amount of money because it's just to put in place backup, a procedure if you have an issue, and so on. But when you speak about basic cybersecurity, and you see that I put that in parallel, meaning that it's not because you do that, you don't have to do that. You remember that it's preventive or curative. But if you want to go to the full OT, it will be something that will be step by step because the cost will be really higher to put that in place in your company. So it's 53. So I just finished right now. And I give you back the hand.
Thank you, Jean-Francois. So that is very interesting. So both talks are very interesting to us because I can see that we have many questions, on the chat. So now I will open the Q&A session. So I will post the list of the questions that we have in the chat, so that the speakers can answer. So we may not be able to to answer all the questions, but I will try to select the questions and publish the question here. So I will switch between the first speaker and the second speaker, so they both can have the chance to answer the questions. So this one should be the questions for Marco, right?
Yes, so I wasn't suggesting to use PCI DSS for the OT domain, but there are specific applications such as ATM production, which are cyber physical systems, so the automated teller machine. And if you produce such physical and cyber components, then you have to deal with PCI DSS, of course. Not sure. I mean, this is one example.
Okay. Thank you, Marco. So we have the another one for Jean-François, I guess. Here, what tools can we use to detect OT devices on the network?
Oh, I think that today the tools are on the table. There is multiple ones, so maybe we can share a list of this kind of tools at the end of this presentation. I will ask that to Bob. But I should say that the tools, once again, if the question is the tools, I think first thing you need to do what you would like to detect, and then you will choose the right tool, and not to do the opposite, because today there is a lot of company providing hardware, software, and saying with my software you will be able to do anything. I should say first thing, don't speak about tools, speak first about what is your concern, what is your problem today, what you would like to achieve as a cybersecurity level, and then you will define some phases, and maybe that the first phase will not be tools related, but maybe that the first phase will be procedure related. And it's much more important to do the right procedure before to have a tool. I don't say that you don't have to install this kind of tool, of course, but then once again, it's maybe not the first question to have, but at the end of this meeting, I will ask to provide that so that you will have a list of this kind of tools. Okay,
thank you. So the next one is for Marco. How does policies and procedure on IEC 62443 different from ISO 27001?
Yeah, so 27001 is mostly concerned with business processes that are not necessarily related to the production of the OT system or the architecture of the OT system. So the 27001 has requirements over the HR policy. How do you onboard somebody in your company? Which type of role requires which type of training or certifications? Then you have requirements over the financial processes, etc. In the 27001, you also have a requirement, so a control that you have to put in place over the production of your products. But this is a general control. It only asks you to have a sort of secure process development lifecycle. It doesn't ask you any details over how you do that. While 62443, especially the 41, goes into the details of how you have to create this secure process development lifecycle. So it asks you to have, so it has some specific requirements over how you define the requirements, how you assess them, how do you use the result of the assessment for the design phase, how do you verify them, how do you verify that the requirements have been considered in the design, how you test the independence of testers. So it's much more specific over the production, so the secure process development lifecycle. And the 4.2 is a list of technical requirements, so technical architecture and functional requirements, such as you have to introduce in your OT system an authentication process for all the users. You have to block all the debug ports, etc.
Okay, thank you, Marco. And I think this one is the last question we can have. So it's for myself. What are the main reasons to implement the complete security plan in the company? So this question is from for Jean-François.
Yeah,
please.
It's a very good question, because most of the time when we speak about put in place a security, it's to say that it will, if you don't do that and you are attacked, you will have a direct cost on the company impact, meaning that you will not be able to produce, and so the company will be in danger. But there is a lot of other topics that we can put on the table when we speak about implementing security. Human risk, for example. If your industrial machines are out of control, it could have a direct impact on the operator on the machine, because the machine will do maybe overpressure and will cost the life of a human. So it could be these kind of things. The reputation of the company, because when you have information in the media that your company was attacked, it's already a bad signal for the investor, for the clients, for a lot of things. So reputation is also very important regarding this security implementation. And I should say the last one, because very important also, it's the data. Today we speak a lot about the data and the value of the data. Of course, if you are attacked, maybe you continue to produce, but the data was stolen. And for this, you could have a company value that is extract from your company to maybe other one. And so the value of your data will be lost and will be transferred to concurrents, for example. But also you could have a legal issue regarding the data. You know that you have the HGDP and you need to be sure that the data of your customer, for example, are in a safely place. And just an attack like this could be a legal issue for your company. So there is a lot of things that on the table to say that I need to implement something because all of those topics.
Okay, thank you. And maybe we have one quick answer for this. Has the IEC 62443 framework set been recently updated?
It depends. Yes, it depends on what you mean by recently, but 4.1 and 4.2 are 2018. The rest is older, up to 2006. But yeah, those two that I mentioned, 2018. So quite recently.
Okay. Thank you very much for your there are fantastic presentations here that we have. So thank you very much to speakers, to Marco, Jean-François. And then last but not least, I would like to announce the services that we have, for the EDH project. Now we have it in Luxembourg, right? So we call this project LDIH. So we have the training catalog. We are collecting all the trainings related to manufacturing and industry to one stop, to one training catalog. So this catalog is available in a PDF version now. If you go to the if you go to dih.lu and search for the training catalog, you should be able to see this PDF version. So the trainings here are available in English, French, and German. And also we can customize the trainings depending on the need of your company. Okay. So the platform, that we're gonna have the trainings like list on the platform on the website now is it should be available soon. And the new update of this training catalog, should be coming in 2024, by the January. So another service that I would like to announce is here we have the Digital Skills Maturity Assessment. So this service performed by us, University of Luxembourg Competence Center. So the assessment will be available in German, English, French, Luxembourgish, and also Portuguese. So the assessments are divided into two different parts. The first part will be in general digital skills, about the information and data maturity, communication, how well you know about the communication tools, that you can use to communicate. For example, the conference call, sometimes there are some more advanced settings that we can use. So this one, if you need a training for this, we can define the roadmap of the training according to this skill. And also the digital content creation, how to create the files, how to create the presentation, and so on. And problem solving, if you know well how much you can solve the issue of your computer by yourself. So we have the assessment for the first part, and also we're having the assessment for the second part. It's about the emerging technologies. So this one is more like, for technical part, in manufacturing and industries. So we have several sections, in the part 2 as well. So besides this, we also have the other assessments available in LDH project. We have light and full digital maturity assessment, and also we have light and full cybersecurity maturity assessment. So, for this project, we have the many services. So if you are interested, you can contact me directly in this email, or, if you go to the website, dih.lu, you will find the contact, and then somehow we can start our service from there. So thank you all for your attention and for joining us today. So we hope to see you soon, in following webinars, because somehow we're going to have the series of the webinars coming from starting from now. So thank you very much and see you again next time. Okay, bye-bye. Also, thank you for our speakers. Okay, bye-bye.
See you, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.